What's up guys, I just finished Genesis Testament Volume 5 as it was fully translated recently, and I just want to say a massive thank you to JS06 for working on the translation updates during the holiday season. Saying the Toaru fandom are grateful for your work is an understatement. Like, we are so fortunate that you continue to provide insanely fast updates for us for so many years, so if you're watching this video, I hope you have a fantastic new year, and just, thank you again for continuing to translate the series, and we're just all really grateful for what you do. By the way, this review won't be spoiler free, so if you haven't read the entire volume yet, make sure you come back later in the future once you have read it all, and then you can watch this video without being spoiled. This volume is really good, and there is so much to discuss in this volume, it's pretty stacked. So I won't be able to cover everything I want to in this video, hence why there will be a Toaru podcast dedicated to the volume this Sunday, 2nd of January, so don't miss it. Anyway, let us begin. So with this review, I'm going to talk about the volume chronologically, starting with the prologue all the way to the ending, and then summarising my thoughts right at the end, and giving the volume a score out of 10. Overall, this volume was essentially a sequel to Genesis Testament 3, but it does follow on directly from Genesis Testament 4, and only a few elements that occurred in GT4 make an appearance in this volume. Not an awful lot happens in the prologue itself, it mainly acts as an introduction to Alice as a character who was referenced at the end of the previous volume by Anna Sprengel, and the newly introduced character known as Aradia. Alice simply appears out of nowhere in Toma's bathtub, which isn't suspicious at all by Toma's standards, as this shit can happen to him all the time. While I joke, this introduction made Alice feel like a mysterious character, and one that we feel suspicious about, especially considering that she has ties to Anna, who loves causing random chaos from the previous volumes. We are then introduced to a weird location, a cruise ship floating in a stadium in the middle of a rainforest. That seems totally normal, just about as normal as its inhabitants, who seem to all be from different legends, myths, and fairy tales, all with a fictional origin, with Aradia being a member, Alice being the leader, and Anna being the latest recruit to this club. Like, I don't know what to call this group, so I'll just call them Alice's Club for now. Speaking of Alice, she is actually implied to be stronger than Anna, but not only Anna, but everyone else in her club, which was pretty confusing and mind-blowing to read about at first. Anyway, we the audience know that Alice has gone missing from this strange headquarters, and we learn that Alice only leaves this place to go on adventures, and this time, as we know, it's with Toma. We later find out in the epilogue why she left in the first place, and yes, it's all according to Anna's keikaku. The prologue was short, as expected from a prologue, but it did what it needed to do. It intrigued me for what was to follow, even if some of the concepts introduced seem completely absurd, but hopefully in future volumes we will understand what's the deal with Alice's club, where they came from, and what do they all want from Alice. Now we move on to chapter 1. I really like the world building that this chapter starts off with, but we all know Index never changes the status quo, right and on, ha 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 ha, cool story bro, let's send Accelerator to jail. But he gets a TV which some fans were mad about, which I find kinda funny. Meanwhile, both Academy City and the world seem in uproar about the revelation of the clones and the demise of RNC Occultics from the previous volume. Although what confused me a bit is that Kuroko describes the demise of RNC as an inconvenience. Are the protesters angry at the stuff that happened in LA? Or is it because magic is no longer available to the public? I don't know. Whatever the case, I am enjoying seeing these protests, as it indicates a shift in what is happening in the world, similar to the protests we saw way back in Old Testament 14, which led the way for World War III. Meanwhile, Toma is out shopping with Alice, who is acting really strange, acting very lovey-dovey with Toma for seemingly no reason. Toma goes along with it because he's under the impression he must have known her before his memory loss, so he doesn't want to be awkward and say, who are you? The strange behaviour of Alice further emphasises that something isn't quite right, and acts as foreshadowing for what happens later on. I certainly started to question, what the hell does she even want with Toma? Next, we are introduced to the main event of the volume with the crash of the overhunting train, which was keeping the prominent criminals that were still alive after Operation Handcuffs. The train crashes, which forces Toma and Alice into the situation. Now, chapter 2 is where things got really interesting, as at the end, we learn that all the events that happened involving Toma and Alice so far were actually being influenced by Alice's magic, known as Live Adventures in Wonderland. This magic is pretty mind-blowing and a bit hard to describe, but essentially it is very similar to the reality warping that magic gods such as Ophinus can use. Alice can link any two theories or ideas together to create an optimal reality that will benefit who she wants, which can involve changing people's personalities, making events that occur more convenient, and even reviving the dead. Now, I haven't talked to many people about the volume, but the ones I did talk to noticed something wasn't particularly right. And I was the same, like how Toma conveniently wasn't harmed after the train crash, Toma finding money when he was broke, why Frilsand wasn't using her instant death bullshit from GT3, why Yoan was being overly friendly towards Kuroko and Toma, and lastly how Yoan managed to create an exact copy of Drencher using his technology in the lab within minutes of Frilsand arriving. That last one really made me think if Kamachi was writing bad on purpose or not, but luckily there were enough clues evident throughout the story that something was wrong, all the way from Alice's personality to how the story was progressing in an unnatural way. Anyway, despite Alice wanting to help Toma and thinking her world is working in Toma's best interest, Toma rejects it and prefers to have his reality back, even if he is outmatched, and will die as a result. It's understandable why Toma rejects this, because he has learned to value his own reality from his experiences fighting Ophinus, and an idealized version of the world is not one worth living under. So I really enjoyed this interaction between Alice and Toma, and the twist was well written by Kamachi, as he implemented the foreshadowing from volume 1 and 2, and the sudden shift when Toma finally realises Alice is intervening was really cool. Of course, it left me with many questions regarding Alice, so I hoped we would get more clarification later on, but I soon found out that Kamachi is likely saving this for future volumes, as Alice really does act as a bystander for the rest of the volume, as Toma wished in a way. Let's talk about chapter 3, which was my favourite chapter of the entire volume, for reasons I'll talk about very soon. So, Alice cancelled her spell, which causes a soft time reset back to when the overhunting train had crashed, and this time Toma is injured, unlike the previous reality where he was unscathed, hinting that this world will be much harsher and dangerous than Alice's world. Toma is quickly found and taken away by none other than Aleister fucking Crowley, who has decided to finally reveal to Toma that he's in fact still alive. What really surprises me though is that Toma recognised Aleister despite him being in Kuronzon's body, and Toma actually starts crying tears of joy that Aleister is still alive, and Aleister starts to comfort him. This really emphasises how complex Toma and Aleister's relationship actually is. Aleister in many ways ruined Toma's life and so many others in the city, and yet Toma still feels a lot of sympathy towards Aleister. I think especially after Aleister saved Toma's life in the Kuronzon arc and then later sacrificed himself to not only save the entire UK but the entire world. And I find it funny how Aleister, in the form of a demon, offers to help Toma and intervene in the prison breakout to resolve all these loose ends. It almost feels like Toma is getting an offer from the devil in this situation. And I also find it interesting that Toma was offered help previously in Genesis Testament 2 by Aihana Etsu, except this time it's from someone Toma is pretty familiar with. Toma knows that Aleister is likely gonna just murder everyone, and obviously since Toma hates killing people, even if they are mass murdering criminals, that's not gonna happen. The dynamic between these two is just fantastic, with their contrasting viewpoints, and Aleister basically admits that Toma's talk no jutsu is something he doesn't want to argue against, which I found pretty funny. Aleister mysteriously disappears once Alice arrives, and we soon discover a very unlikely culprit of Tesso Tizori has caused the train to crash in the real world, as opposed to Frilsand in Alice's world. If you forgot who Tesso is, I'm talking about the anti-skill fodder from the Railgun anime, but the other big shock is that after handcuffs, she basically turned evil, wanting to manipulate criminals into killing other ones, or basically just using them as tools until she decides what justice to enforce upon them. Now, this character shift did come completely out of nowhere, as Tesso was the complete opposite of how she acts previously, although she does have some of that inner shyness which Yamikawa later exploits. But, overall, it is a major character shift, and I don't think she even appeared in GT3, which makes me think that there wasn't really any foreshadowing to this. However, Kamachi clearly does put effort into his writing to explain why Tesso did have this sudden character shift, with the major cause being that she witnessed her anti-skill colleagues being massacred during handcuffs. Since she was never mentally the strongest character, I think it does make sense that this event would traumatize her, and Kamachi decided this would be in the form of her character taking a dark shift. Now we won't be able to watch Railgun again without thinking about this, so Tesso uses Rakuoka's sister, called Nodoka, to beat the shit out of Kuroko with quite unconventional weapons of knuckle dusters on a rope that she swings around. Okay, but why not use a gun? Oh yeah, and it's also implied that Nodoka is the one that actually killed the Kihara stalking her, and not her brother, who simply disposed of the body. The next best part of this chapter is Yamikawa versus Tesso. You really feel sorry for Yamikawa, who has just lost her apprentice like some Obi-Wan and Anakin shit, and all that trauma she also faced during handcuffs, as she was right in the middle of it, and we saw that in GT3. And it just further emphasises what Yamikawa has to deal with, and still has the mental fortitude to try and do the right thing, even if it means fighting her former comrade. While it's not the most explosive fight in the series in terms of universe-ending magic, like we've gotten previously, I really enjoyed the strategy employed by both in the fight, and it was well executed and described by Kamachi. So, great fight, love this chapter. The end of chapter 3 is basically Accelerator ringing up Toma, saying there is one more problem for his gang to deal with, and that is Kihara Hasu, who is back somehow. Now, it is somewhat explained that Hasu has basically modelled himself off of Frilsand via high voltage cutting, and implemented his personality into it, and according to the information that we do get, this was something he could easily accomplish with the parts lying around. But when Hasu actually did this remains a mystery, as before his death in GT3, he wanted Drencher's research on how to create ghosts, but he soon died before he seemingly got his hands on it. I don't know if this will be clarified in future volumes. If not, it's up to us to basically theory craft. Yay! So, yeah, it's not ideal. Toma and his company arrive at the vanishing tunnel where space is being distorted by Hasu. Toma manages to enter it because he has a Magic Breaker, as the others can't enter this secret space in the tunnel from what I gather. We find out Hasu's ghost basically wants to use the tunnel to spread Academy City tech across the world to cause chaos, and he's basically manipulating Risako one of Drencher's orphans from GT3, to basically stop Frill-san from intervening, and Risako's desire for power and revenge after handcuffs is also powering Hasu, who is using her as an indirect host, again from what I gather. That's not the first time I said that, basically because this part of the novel is kind of confusing, and I've noticed a lot of people have said that, so I think Chapter 4 might require a few rereads to make us fully understand it, and maybe a bit of Genesis Testament 3 as well thrown in there. Back to the story, and Toma gets wrecked by Hasu with his chainsaw, which can also manipulate carbon nearby, but Hamazura, Sodate, Noken and Clipper Puzzle all show up to save the day, with Clipper convincing Risako that she doesn't need to get revenge. She just needs to be strong so that everyone can be happy in the end. This also allows Hasu to be sucked into the imaginary number school district, where he is finally defeated by Kazakiri. This chapter definitely felt like the most messy in the volume. There were some great moments like where Sodate says he wants to be as strong as Accelerator to defeat Hasu, and Accelerator, who is observing the events via Clipper, says this kid is a much better and stronger person than he is. Like, that was a pretty emotional moment for both characters, especially considering where Accelerator's character is in the present. And I like that this final confrontation includes the characters who have all inherited part of Drencher's spirit to help defeat Hasu. Even Toma, who has never even met Drencher, respects what he stood for so much. My main problems is the fact that a lot of what happens isn't well clarified, and how Hamazura and everyone managed to enter this part of the taboo, or the vanishing tunnel, whatever you want to call it, when Kuroko, Yoan and Kai couldn't. Maybe because Hamazura was there before, so he knew how to enter it, but I'm not sure about the others. Also, speaking of the twins, you know how I found it weird when I said Yoan was friendly with Toma and Kuroko in Alice's world? Well, she's pretty much similar to this in the real world. Both her and Kai don't want to get revenge on Kuroko for fucking Kai up, and turning her into a living slime thing. Well, it was partly Kai's fault for that, but you get what I mean. And turns out Kai likes being made out of slime, and the twins would rather help Toma than escape the city, which seemed a bit out of character for me. Also, I find it weird that when Hamazura arrived, Toma and Hamazura barely noticed each other, like there was no, "Hey, what are you doing here?" They both pretty much accepted their reunion with no distinction. I mean, they said like one sentence to each other, but it wasn't like a major reunion or anything, and I found that a bit weird. Like, I would have thought Toma and Hamazura would be shocked to see each other, but evidently not. I do find it funny how the real world that we get in, chapter 3 and 4 do feel like they could also be in Alice's world, like with all these weird events going on that aren't really explained. Like, is this the vibe that Kamachi wants us to get from this volume? That we are supposed to question what is real and what is not, like the Matrix? Like, maybe that is the case. Lastly, the epilogue and ending, which shows a lot of promise for the next volume in the series. Toma can no longer move because of his injuries. Anna takes Alice away back to her club, with Toma vowing that he will rescue Alice from that darkness. Next, we get the revelation that Anna purposely influenced Alice to go to Academy City to meet Toma, as Anna knew that Toma would reject Wonderland, which in turn piques Anna's interest in him. This is bad news for the rest of the club, since they all want Alice's focus to be on them, and what they want, rather than on Toma. So, a very pissed off Aradia screams Toma's name, hinting that Aradia is going to hunt down Toma next volume. The final scene of GT5 is that of Aleister and Noken, where it is revealed that Aleister was using the conflict in the city to his advantage in order to obtain something very important, and that he was concerned about Toma being manipulated by Anna and Alice, so he was actually willing to put aside his plan to help Toma, which I think shows a lot of character development for Aleister, that he is caring more for both Toma and Accelerator, when previously Aleister was just completely devoted to his plan. Or maybe he's just jealous that Anna is using Toma as a toy, when that was always Aleister's thing to do. We don't know. Aleister obtained a tablet with the location of Anna Kingsford's grave. This new Anna apparently was the teacher of both Westcott and Mathers, and was the person based off Anna Sprengel. What Aleister is planning to do with Anna Kingsford, and what exactly the link between these two Annas remains a mystery. But now that I think about it, Anna Sprengel was supposedly a fictional character invented by Westcott, in a similar fashion that Alice is a fictional character, and the members of her club could also fit into that category. This seems to be getting quite interesting. I just hope Aleister has more luck visiting this grave than he did with Mathers' grave back in New Testament 20. I just really hope that we get Aleister versus Anna next volume. That would be sick. And that concludes the volume. I wasn't able to talk about everything as this volume was absolutely stacked, but I pretty much summarised the most important parts here. I think this volume had some 10 out of 10 brilliant moments, like Aleister's interaction with Toma, the mystery behind Alice, and a fight between Tesso and Yomikawa. And I like the fact that this volume really made me question that although Alice said that she ended her Wonderland spell, the events that happened in the real world also felt at times that they could have been under the influence of Alice, like the crazy things regarding Tesso and Hasu. This volume is one I feel like will be talked about a lot in the future, just because I feel like you can put your tinfoil hat on and make a lot of theories regarding what just happened in this volume. I also love the unique structure and theming of this volume, but I do have some criticisms. Hasu is a pretty poor villain by index standards, and he's not even the real Hasu, just his personality who wants to do evil Kihara stuff for no reason, which is something even Noken points out. And yet again, we get a lot more questions than answers, which has been sorta a recurring theme in Genesis Testament volumes as of late. Listen, I know a lot of them will be answered in the future, and the mysteries are always interesting and good, and I don't know if all of these will be answered, I just hope they are, but probably not. I mean, of course we're going to learn more about Alice and her club, that's pretty much guaranteed, but are we going to learn about how Hasu managed to come back? I sure do hope so. Overall, Genesis Testament 5 was a solid volume of index, and had a lot more going for it than GT4, so I'm going to rate it an 8 out of 10. GT3 is still my favourite GT volume so far, as I feel like it had more of a solid structure and focus than GT5, but hey, I really enjoyed that Kamachi was willing to do a unique structure with GT5, rather than sticking to trends like a Darkside Battle Royale volume that is pretty much always guaranteed to be a blast. Not to say that trend is bad, but, you know, I like unique stuff. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to check out the GT5 podcast this Sunday for mine and Malcolm's expanded thoughts. Drop your thoughts about the volume below, I'd love to hear what you think. And yeah, hope you have a happy new year, and I'll see you all next time. Bye bye.